And we're going to do gallery view. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you. Hold on just a moment. There we go. And excellent. All right, so hopefully everybody can see that. So welcome to From Bland to Brilliant. Become a confident speaker and wow your audience every time. So if you're if you're on the dashboard, not calling in from home, Sally, I'll keep checking in with you. But if you've come in and you're the dashboard, you can also write in the chat room as we go through, and I'll be checking back and forth. And I have wanted to, I've presented this before because so many people, so much that we do is impacted by our ability to communicate. And so what I want to talk to you today is how to have messages for your audiences that make you seem brilliant and have the impact that you want on your audiences. So thriving businesses start with thriving business owners, and that's my philosophy. That's the way I see things. And really, if your business owner doesn't feel like they're in control and thriving, then your business isn't going to. And unfortunately, for the first time in 34 years in the United States, more businesses are dying every month than are being born. And every time I say that, I get a little emotional because that's my mission, to stop that. And I feel like it starts with business owners. And I want to create thriving entrepreneurs. And there are 10 talents of a thriving entrepreneur. One is confidence. One is that they can take risks. The third is that they're creative thinkers. They promote. That means they share and connect, and they promote for themselves and others. They have a focus on their business. They seek knowledge. They're independent. They are definitely determined. They're a delegator. That means they bring other people. They have a team that they delegate things to, and they create relationships. So when you have all these talents of a thriving entrepreneur, there's one thing, though, that even if you had all of these, that if it's missing, you're not going to make the impact that you want. And that key ingredient is communication. Communication allows you to connect with an audience, whether you're talking to somebody one-on-one, whether you're talking with the hundreds of people, either in front of you or on a webinar like this, or if you're on Skype and you have an interaction with one or many. It all comes down to, if you want to thrive as a business owner and become a thriving entrepreneur, is your ability to communicate. And that ability to communicate comes in many different ways. It's ability to communicate what you offer. It's ability to communicate what makes you the go-to expert for whatever you're offering. Communication also can be that presentation in front of the room, so you're seen as that expert authority. So whether you're one-on-one or in front of hundreds or thousands of people, it all starts with being able to communicate who you are and what you do effectively. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And so for some of you who don't know me, and so that are live now, and I know that a lot of people signed up that are just going to be watching the recording. I always like to say, who am I? So besides being a mom to 3, I am a wife to my husband of over 18 years, and I have a rescue dog named Sailor. Those are all things that are about me. The other things about me that make me qualified to talk about communication especially is that I have a master's degree in speech pathology. I actually have 2 masters, one in speech pathology and one in audiology. So I get the speech and the hearing components of it. I did doctoral studies in adult communication, specializing in the neuropsychology of communication, and minors in psychology and business. I have a third one thrown in there also with aging. I'm an international speaker. I'm an international best-selling author. I've had a few books, and I've been part of a few books that have gone international bestseller. And I also have taught for the last 6 years, I'm about to enter my 7th year, in the communication program of the MBA and the executive MBA programs at Wharton, which is at the business school for the University of Pennsylvania, for those that aren't familiar with Wharton. And I worked with small business owners and primarily service providers. That's who I love to work with, although I do work with people that do products as well, in over 95 different industries over the past 15 years. So I've been doing this a while, and I've really helped people hone in on a couple of areas. One, effective marketing messages, but also how to speak effectively. And so I'm going to be talking to you about that today. Now, oftentimes when we get in front of an audience, we might misspeak, and we have, if you've heard the dreaded, well, I want you today to embrace the ums. And a little bit different. Generally, when you say it's that your brain is still thinking and you have your mouth open. And so your brain needs to fill in that space. And so that's why you say an if you didn't know that. And there's ways to get rid of that. I do that with people. But today I want you to actually embrace the ums and be okay with them. And so the ums for us stand for understand your audience, have a memorable message, have a solid structure, share your stories, and show up. So we're going to talk about, for the next about 30 or so minutes, these elements. And then I'll have some time to answer some questions. And if you're here at the end, I've got a free gift for everybody. And also some other ways that we can possibly work together. So I'm going to share all of that with you today. So I'm going to check any questions from anybody so far. Whoops, didn't want to do that. Any questions from anybody? How about anybody have any questions so far? I'm going to unmute the line and see if there's any thoughts or questions or anything else that you want me to cover that I might not have had up there so far. No, everybody good? Awesome. All right. So let me go back to sharing my screen then. All right. So if you want to make an impact, you need to engage more people. And I know as entrepreneurs and business owners, that's what we want to do. Whether you're impacting somebody one-on-one, so you're meeting somebody at a networking event and you're having that one-on-one conversation, or you're picking up that telephone and having that sales conversation or that relationship building conversation. You need to understand that you have a message to share, whether it's one-on-one or in front of a large group. And that's how you're going to impact more people. So if you want to impact, you need to engage. So how do you engage? Well, the first thing I always tell everyone is it's not all about you, which means that in order to not be afraid to be in front of an audience, you have to stop thinking about you all the time. Well, am I going to say the right word? Am I going to be the right way? Am I going to stutter when I talk? Am I confusing? Flip that around and start thinking about who is the audience? Who is the person that you're talking to? This is one of the most important things. So if you're doing a prepared speech, or you're going to a networking event, or you're picking up the phone to make a sales conversation, the most important thing that you can do first is what I call audience analysis. Audience analysis is a deep dive. It's asking yourself the questions, who is my audience? Some people will talk to that, when you're doing business and your marketing messages, like who's my ideal client? Who's my target? What do they care about? Who are they? And then think about if you have a service, or if you're presenting a topic. Let's say you're at a networking event and you want to talk about your service. Who's your ideal audience? Or who's in the audience at that networking event or that association meeting? Who's in your audience? What do they already know about the service that you provide? Where do they get their information? Are they getting their information from magazines? What magazines? Are they a USA Today crowd, or are they reading the Wall Street Journal? Where are they listening to others about whatever service it is you provide? Because that will create their perspective. And you need to know what their perspective is on your particular service. Or let's flip it, that you're presenting a topic. You're presenting a speech or a presentation or a workshop. Ask those same questions. Who's in your audience? Are they someone that knows, are they an audience that knows a great deal about your topic? So whether you have 5 minutes in front of an audience or several hours, you need to know what's their foundation. What do they already know in order to engage them? If you have an audience that doesn't know very much about whatever you're speaking about, and you start talking about all the features, or you talk high level, or you presume that they have this level of knowledge that they don't, they're going to be lost. They're going to be confused, and a confused mind turns off. A confused mind doesn't buy. Whether by buying, it could be actual buying your service or product, or by buying meaning they don't buy into what you're saying. And the key to being persuasive, and I'll just start with that in terms of persuasion. Persuasion is changing someone's thoughts, behaviors, actions around a particular topic. It's not manipulation. It's providing information so that somebody can make a decision. And that decision when you're speaking could be to see the topic from your perspective. It could be changing the way they see something. So if you understand your audience, you're going to know how to do what we call frame your presentation. And again, framing their presentation is whether it's one-on-one, you're just having a conversation with someone. You need to really think about, I wonder what they already know about the topic we're talking about, or I wonder what they know about the particular service I offer. Or if you're making a sales conversation, how do they feel about whatever you're calling them about? So understanding your audience, it will be the key to engaging them. So as I said, a confused audience doesn't buy. They also don't continue to listen. So one of the things that you need to make sure is that you have one message. Oftentimes we feel like we need to tell everybody either everything that we do, or if we're doing a presentation, everything that we know about a particular topic. I find this especially true if someone's truly an expert on an area. They try and dump tons of information, even if it's a short presentation. So you have to think about, so after you've done your audience analysis, you start thinking about what's the message, and I like to call it a key message. What's the key message that I want my audience to walk away with? Key messages, I like to make them 14 words or less, and there's a couple reasons for this. One, it's 2 chunks of 7, and we know that people think and are able to remember things in 7s. The other reason is if you can come up with your message in 14 words or less, it means you have great clarity about what you're talking about. It also means that if someone were to ask you about it, you would have a really clear statement. And aside, but if you start noticing and start looking at headlines, they're generally 14 words or less. Also, for media, a soundbite, about 14 words, 8 to 12 seconds is ideal. So if you can create your messages such that they are short, sweet, and concise, then you can write a presentation or deliver a message that's very clear. So first, you want to understand who's in your audience. Then you determine the message that you want them to walk away with, whether they're one-on-one or sitting in an audience. So think about that. The reason that you want your messages to be 14 words or less is that then when you start writing your presentations or creating your script for your 30-second commercial or for any time that you get up to speak, you can create your foundation, your data that comes under it, the supporting evidences, your stories, which we'll talk about in a minute, everything that you want to do to support that key message. So as you're creating information and you start doing an outline, I have this information. You can test it against the tuning for it, the litmus test. Does that message, does this information support my key message? Or is it just some other stuff on the topic? So that key message is really key to keeping your presentation on track and keeping your audience on track so that they understand the messaging that you want to present to them. And there's my phone going off in the background. So let's move forward. The other thing you want to do is make it memorable, your message. So when you make it 14 words or less and it's clear, it's oftentimes something that's very easy for an audience to walk away with. So they know exactly your perspective on a topic. They know exactly what the key components are. You can make it memorable, your message, also by sharing stories, by sharing who you are. So an audience, in order to keep them engaged, you want to create that key message. For example, if you looked at become from bland to brilliant, become a confident speaker so you wow your audience every time, it's 14 words. That's what I want for you guys. That's my messaging for you today, is that to stop having boring presentations and be able to, or feel like you're bland. No one wants to feel like they're bland. I don't think any of you are, but you might feel that way. To go to being a brilliant presenter and how you then can wow your audience. Ever feel like you, or when you've been sitting in the audience, or you presenting the audience, presenting a certain speech, feel like you get lost? You're wandering around in the woods and you're not quite sure what the speaker is trying to say, or you start off and it's so easy to lose and start rambling. That's because you haven't created a structure or a context. This will cause you and your audience to get lost. If you have that key message, it keeps you on track a little bit more. And so this is where that structure can follow after the key message. So you want to have a strong structure so that you and your audience won't get lost. So how does it start off? It starts off by giving them a map, talking about what you're going to cover. So whether it is a sales conversation, hi, Mary, it's Sue, I'm just giving you a quick call because I want to reach out and haven't talked to you for a while. I want to hear what you're up to and maybe spend 15 minutes reconnecting. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to share with you what's going on with me. That's a map for what's going to happen on a sales conversation. You also want a map for a presentation. So, for example, if you're presenting on a topic, you've shared your hook to bring the person in and get them engaged. For me, often when I speak on business topic, it's often the fact, which I share with you today, that more businesses are dying every month that are being born, according to the Small Business Association of the government. And that's an astounding statistic to me. It's something that hits me every single time. So that's something to bring my audience in if I'm speaking about marketing or speaking about business development, which I do often. Then I talk about the ways to effectively make a change. So today we're talking about speaking, and so I shared with you the map is that we were going through the ohms. So each of the 5 components of the ohms. That's your map. You know where we're going. You know, we've done understanding audience, so we've done the U. We've done memorable messages, that's our M, and we're now on structure. So you know there's two more pieces that come after this. So I've created a map for you, and then I transition from one thing to another. Sometimes I can recap, as I did. We talked about, just like I just talked about, understanding your audience and also making it memorable messages. Having a map for your audience, letting them know where you're going and transitioning from one piece of content to another, again, all of it following your key message, will make your audience feel more in control, feel like their minds won't distract. Because to be honest, as adult learners, we have less attention span than kids, and even studies are showing, I'm not sure how they're doing this, but have shown that our attention span is about 9 seconds. It's about less than that of a guppy. So I am sure that I've lost you today multiple times. You're checking your Facebook, you're doing this, you're doing that, and I know that. And so I need to keep bringing you back to your mind, back to the talk, and you would need to do that for your audience as well. You want to keep them engaged so that you wow them. Having a map is a way to do that. Letting them know where you're going and following that structure is a strong component to helping your audience feel secure. Because what they want to know when they first sit down is, why am I here? So that's why you're telling them about what you're going to share with them, your key message. Why am I listening to you? That's why shared credibility. And then what are you going to talk about? Where are we going? And do I really want to go on this journey with you? Do I want to spend my time listening to you? The map will help with all of that. Now, stories. Share your stories. This is really important also for persuasion. And there's an art to storytelling. And I'm not going to go through all of the components of how to tell a great story, but there are a couple different types of stories. So I'll just share a few of them. One story is the who am I story, and that can be a story where you share a common ground. So who you are as a person. It's not just your credentials, but it's who you are. It's your experience that might be applicable to whatever the topic is that you're talking about. It is your overcoming an obstacle that the person, the audience might share that obstacle and how you overcame it and came out the other side. That also, we call that a springboard. So one of the things that's really key to that is that you tell the story so that the person feels like they're in the story with you, that they're going through it with you, and you always have to have that positive ending. So when you're going through that type of story, you want to have the solution so that they can feel like they know you come out the other side, they can come out the other side as well. There's also problem and solution, which is where rather than bringing them into the story with you, where they feel like it's that you're talking a more distance, where you're sharing a problem and then how it was solved. But the key to telling your story is that you don't tell every detail of the story. You tell the relevant pieces. You can tell a very effective story in as little as 6 words. I think this is right. Hemingway had a story, 6 words. Children's shoes are for sale. Children's shoes never worn. I think that's the right 6 words. Pretty powerful. We know what the story is. It might even be baby shoes never worn. 2 longer stories that are 2 or 3 minutes long. But your goal is really to have the most effective is to keep it a minute to minute and a half max. When you're doing speeches even as short as 5 minutes, you can craft a story that's in there. 20 seconds to 40 seconds would be an effective story to have when you're doing a 5-minute talk. A 5-minute talk, you want to have, again, your hook, the problem, why listen to you, your system, which can incorporate your story. Stories that you can also share are client stories. I often share different, with permission, client stories that really indicate how a client has done or solved a problem. Don't be afraid to share your stories. Sharing your stories is really, really important to connecting and engaging with your audience. And as you know, speeches are more than just words. You can craft the most eloquent speech, the most powerful content, put it all together, and still not wow your audience, because ultimately you need to show up. And there's ways to show up and own the stage. First, it shows with your confidence. So, am I confident? Have I practiced my presentation? Persuasion is all about changing someone's thoughts, actions, behaviors, or beliefs around a certain topic. And there's components. Aristotle taught us all about, so I'm going way back, taught us all about persuasion. And he said they made up of 3 components. So the one component is called logos. And logos was that structure I talked about. Are you making a logical argument? How do the words that you've put together and the structure you've put together make sense to me? Good. So we covered that. We have a strong structure. You're going from one place to another. It makes sense. That's good. Ethos, which is ethics or trust, credibility. Do I trust you when you're talking? Some of that comes from your presence. So this is the showing up part. Some of that comes from the credentials when you talk in the very beginning and you establish your credibility with the audience. Ethos is also very important by you understanding the audience, that you understand where they're coming from. If you don't understand where they're coming from, there'll be a disconnect. And the last piece that is really important is called pathos, and that is connection. How are you connecting to your audience? If you come and you have no vocal inflection, so I know you've heard speakers who have almost read their presentations. Never, ever, 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 ever read a speech. I would much rather you ramble along and we get lost in the woods than read a speech. I'm not saying not have notes, but don't ever read a speech because 1, it shows that you haven't prepared. 2, it tells me that you're not confident or an expert in what you're saying if you have to read the material. You want to be able to know your presentation well enough that you're confident enough to speak about it whenever, wherever. That presence, you've seen speakers that have presence. When I see the stage, just like I see a coaching space, as this really special space. So when I'm up on stage, I owe it to the people that I'm in front of to give them a bit of me. That's why I want to share stories. That's why I want to talk with them. Generally, I engage with most of my people in the audience as I'm talking along. But you want to show up. You want to show up as confident. You want to show up maintaining eye contact. So right now, even with you being out there in virtual land, I'm really cognizant of where my camera is because I've done this before where I looked at my screen instead of at you. But if you're in front of an audience, you want to maintain eye contact. I know you've had either one-on-one conversations and people have been looking away, scanning the room. And what's it seem like? Are they paying attention to you? Are they listening to you? Do you feel like you're being wowed by them? No. Same thing when you're speaking to a large audience. You want to make sure that your eye contact connects with every single person in the audience, one way or another. And there's simple ways to do that. If it's a smaller audience, you can do it pretty easily one-on-one, but you always want to quarter off the room. So what you do is as you're looking out, you create almost a quadrant of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you vary your eye contact. That might seem simple, but many people don't know that. Here's another secret. You're uncomfortable looking somebody straight in the eye, then look at their forehead. It looks the same as if you're looking at them eye to eye, but it's more comfortable for you. Also, if you lose your train of thought, don't worry about it. Pause for a moment. Your audience isn't going anywhere. Don't tell them you're sorry. There's nothing to be sorry for. Pause, take a moment, look to a back wall. Don't look down to the ground or up to the sky. Look at a back wall and take a moment, collect your thoughts, and continue on. You can even, if you want to, bring humor into it. That's bringing you. If you know that you have a good way with humor, and I say this cautionary-wise because not everybody does, and humor is one of those risky things that you can do that can fall flat. But if you have a way with humor, bring in some light humor. Not cutting humor, not sarcastic humor, but light humor often will engage and allow you to own the stage. Speak at a pace that people can understand you. Speak at a volume that they can understand you. There's nothing worse than a speaker who speaks too fast or at a volume where you too loud or too low where you can't understand what they're saying. I know these things all seem pretty simple, but they're also all pieces of the confident speaker toolbox and knowing that you own that stage. Now, what if you get nervous? I have to share a secret. I still get nervous. If you don't get nervous, you're probably, one, going to show up bland, and you don't really care about your audience. But what if you show up really nervous, where you think that you're not going to be able to present? A couple of things that show that you're nervous. Sometimes your hands can shake. That's why I don't use big notes. Worst thing is having a big piece of paper as your notes and your hands are shaking. Audience can tell right away. Small notes help that. Notes to the side if you need them help that. Humming actually helps you to calm your vocal cords and yourself. That nervous feeling is just your autonomic nervous system either getting into fight or flight because it's an unusual thing for us to be in front of large peering eyes at us. So humming ahead of time will help. Deep breaths will slow down the autonomic nervous system and give your body the sign, hey, I don't need this extra breathing. You know, when you start doing all that fast breathing, slow it down because it'll calm the nerves that go on in your stomach. There's many nerves in your gut and your stomach as there are in your brain. So that's why you get that feeling. So I'm just going to open it up for a moment and see if there's any questions. Let me come over and unmute everybody. Any questions as I've been going through?
I have a question, Sue. Can you hear me?
I can.
You said about holding cards or not holding paper. I just feel when I have an hour presentation or an hour and a half, I have to have note cards. Is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing to have note cards at all. What I would say is, and this is what I encourage everyone, even with for an hour presentation, is to keep your note cards smaller. The smaller, the better. If you can get away with 3x5, that, in my opinion, this is what I teach my persuasive speaking students, is use 3x5 cards. A couple of things. One, you are less likely to write out your whole presentation if you do that. You do just the bullet points. You really, when you're preparing, you can write out your presentation the first time if that's the most comfortable for you. But then after you practice it, you want to start using less and less of the full written out version. And so if you can move yourself over to bullet points, and here's what I recommend, is that you, and this is just going on an extra step, but this is just to keep you a little bit more organized, is put your hook, that, that intro. You want your intro to be really powerful. Put it in one color, because, and sometimes you can write that straight out, and so practice it. You're not going to want to read your hook, though. You want to be able to deliver that powerfully. But you might want to have a note card on it just so that you can practice it ahead of time. But you want to have it powerful. Then the body of your talk, your outline, your message points, do a different color. And then if you have then your conclusion, you want that conclusion to be really strong as well. Because that's what they're walking away with. That's the last thing. And I will often say, put that in a different color, and same thing. Because when you get to your note cards and you see that different color, you're going to want to pause. You're going to want to make sure you finish strong, right? And yeah, does that make sense? And
yes, I guess I'm always concerned that I'm not going to say every single word that I should say, and I got to get past.
So here's the secret. Your audience has no idea what you're going to say ahead of time. They don't know if you missed a word. That's the problem when you write out every word and then you miss one. That's when the structure goes all to heck, because what happens is if you miss a exact word, although you covered the concept, you feel bugged that if it's on your note card that you missed that word. So one way or another, your mind's going to take you backwards to it. So either come back to it, or you'll try and bring it up later when it's not at the right context. So your audience has no idea what you've written down as your speech. They're just here to learn information from you. It does not have to be the exact words, because they don't know any different.
Okay.
That makes sense?
That's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Any other questions, thoughts as we move along? All right. Let me share my screen then again. All right. So the other thing with owning the stage is being respectful. I'm glad that Sally, you asked that question. In terms of, you're there to deliver a message. You're not there necessarily to say a speech word for word. It's really all about messaging. And that's why if you know your key message, you've created content that supports it. You also want to show up as a speaker that can be flexible. So for example, if you're really confident in your material, you can take your material multiple different lengths. So I often will say, if you have a particular content, write it first as a 5-minute talk. Here's just the highlights. It might be that you're just going over, say you have a system or a material that you teach. You just talk about the high points. You don't go into any detail. That's a 5-minute. You invite people to learn more. You invite people to come to a webinar that you're going to explain it more. Then you can take that 5-minute content and expand it out to 20 minutes. So in 15 to 20 minutes. And these are often the time frames that you're asked to speak on. Sometimes you're given, a 30-second just to introduce, or 1 minute. That's more of introducing who you are. A 5-minute is to introduce you in more depth, solve a problem, introduce your system. 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes is often a length then to go a little bit more in depth. So if you've got you already have your hook, you already have your credibility, you already have your engagement as part of the 5 minutes, then you're going a little bit deeper. You need to be able also then to be flexible. Having that where you can go as deep or not as deep as you want will allow you to do anything from a 12 to a 20-minute speech. And I've had to do that, where I'll show up and I think I have 20 minutes and people are running late. I'm really good at being able to shut it down or make it longer. Here, I'm just going to put this on mute. There we go. The other thing then is you can then go from that 20-minute and expand that out to an hour. More stories, more examples, maybe an exercise that you're engaging with the audience, and so on for longer. Maybe you're bringing in a second messaging if you need it for a full day presentation. Now, when you are really confident in your material, you're able to be really flexible. This goes back about 7 years ago, I was speaking in Israel, and I was originally supposed to speak, I think it was about 2 hours. I was an afternoon slot. They had started late because of some issues with the room. A few speakers went over. I was going to be right after lunch. Not an ideal spot, but good. And they asked me, we're running late. You have 2 hours, but we want to ask each of the speakers in the afternoon to be able to go to an hour and 40 minutes, I believe it was. Because I knew my material well enough and I hadn't memorized I knew the content. I knew the topic I was covering. I didn't feel like I had to, because the audience didn't know, cover X, Y, and Z in a certain way. I was able to change my timing up. Like they asked me this at about, I don't know, close to noon, and I was starting to speak at 1:30. I was able to make that flexibility. That is being a speaker that people can count on. You want to be able to do that. Unfortunately, the speaker after me could not do that and actually went long, and so we were better off. And there were comments about that. So being able to take and understand your material well enough allows you great flexibility and the ability to show up and own any stage that you're on, whether it's, again, conversation that's one-on-one, or a 5-minute or a 20-minute or an hour and a half, up to a full day or multiple days, which I've done in the past. You can expand or contract if you know your material and you're confident in what you're offering. So I wanted to just make an offer. I said that I have a new coaching program, and sometimes I find that people get stuck. Either stuck on, I just don't know what my message is, or stuck on ideas. I'm an idea generator. Clients have, and colleagues have nicknamed me that. So I decided to do something different. So thriving is moving forward. And I know that whenever I meet with someone, I can move them forward no matter what. So I've created a Move Forward Now Unlimited coaching program for the rest of 2016. It begins July 1st and goes until December 31st, 2016. And during this unlimited, we can work on speeches, we can work on your marketing messages, or any goal that you have to move your business forward. You get unlimited 20-minute coaching sessions from July 1st to December 31st, 2016. We focus on moving you forward to reaching one of your goals at a time. So these are very laser-focused coaching calls. So when you get on the coaching session, we focus on one thing for those 20 minutes. Before we start the beginning of the program, we meet for 30 minutes so that we give you a little bit more time to establish what you want to accomplish throughout the rest of the year. And then all of the other calls are 20 minutes long. When I talk about unlimited 20-minute coaching sessions, it's that during that 20 minutes, we're going to establish moving you forward on your goal, and we'll establish homework that you need to do. Once that homework's complete, you get to schedule your next 20-minute call. I like working with people who want to move forward and are action takers. People who might need knowledge, might need more ideas. Maybe you're just feeling a little stuck in the next place to be. By having these very laser-focused 20-minute calls, I can help you move forward, help you get unstuck, and know what the next action is for you to take. Again, it could be writing a speech. It could be working on delivering a speech. It could be working on your marketing messages. It could be any of the 10 things we talked about that make up a thriving entrepreneur. The key here is that you need to take action, do your homework, and then you get to schedule the next one. So if you're a fast action taker, we can have calls, every week. It's limited to 20 people. Registration is closing June 26th, so I'm only opening this for a few days. The investment is only $9.97 if you pay in full, or $175 a month for 6 months, which normally a session with me, and I don't actually even sell one-on-one sessions, is over $400. My programs start at $3,000 to work with me. So this is a great way to step in and get things done throughout the rest of the year at a lower price option for you. Bonus, be one of the first 5 people to enroll and pay in full, and one has already done this. I actually talked to somebody this morning before this call. This is the first time I'm talking about this, but they grabbed it up. So one slot is already taken. So be one of the first 5 people to enroll and pay in full, and you get an additional month of coaching, which means that we'll go through January 31st of 2017, meaning I'll help you set up your 2017 for success. There's 2 options. You can pay in full at this link, which is bit.ly, move forward coaching. Or you can do the payment plan, which is same thing, bit.ly / move forward coaching payment plan. So again, if you want to pay in full, because I know people are just listening on the phone, it's http colon / bit.ly / move forward coaching. Or if you want to use the payment plan, it's http colon / bit.ly / move forward coaching PP for payment plan. And again, either one of these options are for you. And so as a recap, and then I'll tell you your gifts, I want you to embrace your ums. Don't feel uncomfortable with these type of ums, which are understanding your audience, have a memorable message, have a solid structure, share your stories, and show up. When you do that in every interaction, you will engage your audience thoroughly and be able to make the impact that you want. So here's your free gifts. I have a free ebook for you, which is the top 100 top tips for better business communication. And I've broken down 10 areas and 10 tips. So you can look at them, or a lot of people have come to me and asked if they could share it, which you can, or use it as a resource. They're just basic tips of better business communication. And you can get that at thrive4success.com / communication -tips. You can also connect with me on Facebook at Thrive, Facebook / Thrive 4 Success. And also, if you, for some reason, you're not quite sure whether you want to move forward or you want to know more about any of the other programs that I offer, then you can fill out a form and have a discovery session with me. It's just a conversation about what you want to do to move forward. You can sign up for that at Thrive 4 Success.com / discovery -session. So, anybody have any other questions or comments or thoughts that they want to ask before we end today? Well, I'd love to hear what was most valuable for you today. What are you taking away from our call today or our webinar today?
That I'm allowed to say once in a while.
There you go. You know what? Is fine. It's when it becomes too interfering. Really,
right.
Here's the secret. I didn't actually even share the secret. So the secret to getting rid of close your mouth. It sounds really, really simple, but it works. So at the end of a sentence, when you're thinking about your next phrase, just close your mouth. Don't make it
okay.
Right. And when you're ready to talk again, you open it. Do that. And most of the time, about 70%, I believe I tracked it over, there's been over 1,000 students I've worked with now. And from the first class to the second class, when they've implemented that, about 70% of the ums can go away if you follow that strategy.
Awesome.
Yeah. And anyone else? What are you taking away from today? Yep. All right. Well, if you want to connect with me, you can connect with me again on Thrive, the number 4success.com. I share resources on a regular basis, and we'll be doing more of these type of webinars. So thank you so much for being here live. And for those that are watching the recorded, I hope to hear from you soon, and keep wowing your audiences. Bye.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.